Disclaimer: this episode may include graphic descriptions of crime and criminal activity. It therefore may not be suitable for listeners who are under the age of 18 and for those who may find the descriptions as disturbing. Listeners' discretion is advised from this point forward. Hello and welcome to this episode of Crime KE podcast. My good name is Stella Juma. I am a journalist from Kenya and your host for this true crime podcast. This week's episode is another update episode from one of the seasons. What am I saying? This week's episode is another update episode from one of the episodes from season 1, and this is also the last episode that I will be recording this season. This episode is based on the story of the brutal murder of Agnes Wanjiru. Now, the story of Agnes Wanjiru was published on June 6th of 2024. For those who have not listened to the first episode, you need to go back and listen before listening to this update episode. I will do a recap of the story, but I will not mention everything. So I think that you need to listen to the whole episode if you haven't, because I do not plan on repeating everything I said in the first episode. And now, without further ado, let us get into today's episode. Also, please stick around until the end of this episode to find out how you can support this podcast. At the time of her death, Agnes Wanjiru was only 21 years old. She was residing in Nanyuki with her 5-month-old daughter. She went missing after a Saturday night out at a hotel in Nanyuki called Lions Court with British soldiers in early 2012. She was missing for 2 months before her decomposing body was found on 31st of March 2012. She had been dumped in the septic tank of the hotel where they were partying. Her autopsy showed that she had stab wounds and she had been in the septic tank for quite a while before she was found. Her case has been something that has been constantly brought up consistently for the last 12 years, especially when conversations about Kenya and UK relations happen. It is reported that even though no one has been brought to justice for her death, it has always been an open secret among the regiment of British soldiers who were training in Nanyuki at the time about who killed Agnes Wanjiru. They have always known, despite the fact that no one has ever been brought to book about her death. It has been alleged that she died in the hands of a British soldier who she was last seen arguing with on that Saturday. I found reports that some of the soldiers even confessed to knowing who killed her and even witnessing the murder. But since she died, no one has ever been held accountable for her death, and it has always been a cycle of trauma for her family. The wheels of justice have been slow on this case, and I really hope that this time around her family gets justice. Now, in 2024, Agnes's family asked the High Court to order the British Army to release the names of the British soldiers who were at Lions Court Hotel on the night of Agnes's murder. They also wanted the court to order the British government to apologize for failing to investigate her death properly, which I feel is a valid ask because, and even the family said this, if it had been a UK citizen who died on Kenyan soil, I promise you, someone would have been in jail, someone would have been held to account. I don't know if it is because she was a Kenyan that she has not yet gotten justice till now. I hope she does get justice. There is no report on whether the court granted their wishes, but I saw that the reason why the British government cannot release that information is because an agreement was reached between the two governments. This agreement is called the sovereign immunity. The lawyers of the British soldiers used the law to prevent the release of information like the names of the soldiers and whatnot. Now, sovereign immunity is basically an agreement that prevents a government and its officials from being sued without their consent. Honestly, I don't even know why that is a thing and why such an agreement would be put in place, because to me it feels like it's just a way of preventing justice. And also, I don't understand how both the Kenyan government and the UK government can keep making promises that they will give this family justice with such I don't know how to call it, with such an arrangement in place. The UK Defense Secretary, John Healey, actually met with Agnes Wanjiru's family on April 7th of this year, and he, of course, offered his condolences and promised to bring their grievances up with a meeting with President Ruto. Now, he did meet up with the president. I am not sure if he brought up the case, but I'm sure that the president is aware of Agnes's case because, come on, this family has been very vocal about wanting justice, and this is not a new case. For 12 years, the president must be aware of this case. He promised that the UK government would continue to offer its full support to Kenya's investigative agencies when it comes to this case, which, knowing how long this case has been, could just be another empty promise, or they could choose to actually help the family and give them closure this time around. There was actually a point in the investigation where the detectives from DCI and even other agencies, investigative agencies in Kenya, went to the UK to interview the British soldiers. And according to the family, they still got nothing after that. The outcome of the investigation has not been made public yet. Now, according to John Healey, the main issue in this case has always been the jurisdiction and that sovereign immunity agreement. The UK government has always declined to take responsibility for investigating Agnes's case because they say that it is the role of the Kenyan police to investigate cases on Kenyan soil. And this is something that I mentioned a lot in the first episode of this case. Like, I don't know why the government would agree to an agreement that allows British soldiers to train in Kenya, hurt the Kenyan people, but they conveniently cannot be prosecuted under the Kenyan law. Now, in 2024, the British Army announced plans to launch an inquiry into the British Army Training Unit in Kenya, also known as the Batuk, after a documentary was released exposing cases of abuse of Kenyan women by these British soldiers. Now, according to the documentary, apart from Agnes Wanjiru, there are many other Kenyan women and children as young as 13 years old who were abused by these soldiers, and they still live with the scars and the trauma of that experience till today. It's not just like Agnes Wanjiru's family is probably the most outspoken about their case, but there are very many other women who suffered abuse under these soldiers that were training in Kenya. I don't even know why British soldiers are given training ground in Kenya, but that is a story for another day. But to come to Kenya and abuse the Kenyan women, no prosecution, no justice, it doesn't seem like a fair agreement to me. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions announced that the results of the inquiry into Agnes's murder had been concluded and submitted for further review by a team of senior prosecutors. They have been tasked with reviewing the inquiry file. I think that this is the latest point on this investigation, and I genuinely hope that it moves past that and the family experiences justice. The family has recounted too many times about how they have waited for way too many years and they have been offered way too many empty promises and they have not seen any movement in the case. They say that it is traumatic for them to keep seeing Agnes's story being aired on the news and they never get justice. Her daughter only knows her mother through pictures and stories she has been told by those who knew her in life. Her daughter should now be 13 years old. Despite the promises from the UK's Defense Secretary, Agnes's family still remains skeptical about whether they will ever get justice for her death. And rightfully so. If I had been promised justice and nothing moved for 13 years, I would also be skeptical. They say that they have lost faith in the process and some of them are even burnt out from looking for justice. Now, for the prosecution of the suspect, the UK government would need to agree to an extradition. The Kenyan government would have to send a formal extradition request of the suspect so that he can face prosecution in line with the Kenyan law, or at least they should renegotiate the defense operation framework. The family has even been advised to pursue a civil case because if they win a civil case, at least they have a chance of receiving, the least they could receive is a compensation for her death. listening to this episode until the end. That is all I have for you on this update episode. I will be following this case closely, and any other updates will be shared on the podcast social media pages and also my social media pages. This is the last episode of season 1. Not season 1, gosh. This is the last episode of this season. I don't want to say season 2 because I kind of digressed from the theme of this season. But yeah, next week I will do a short episode where we can talk about this season. I will read some of your comments and on some of the episodes of this season, and we can discuss the comments. Then I will reveal what season 3 stories will be about and when they will be available. So make sure to listen in if you don't want to miss that. If you have any feedback on the podcast, something that you would want us to discuss next week, this is the time to send in your comment, because yeah, we can read the comment and discuss. I will give you feedback on your comments next week. You can share it through my social media. If you have feedback, you can share it through the podcast Instagram page or even the comment section on Spotify and even on YouTube ahead of next week's episode. You can support this podcast by sharing it with your circle so that we can get a larger community to tune in. Follow the podcast on social media if you don't. Crime KE podcast is now available on YouTube. My YouTube channel is Ajuma on YouTube. You will find the podcast on the podcasts tab. You can find the podcast on Instagram at crime.ke. I usually post the crime cases that I talk about on the podcast, updates of cases from season 1, and even just educational content that I find insightful. If there is a case that you want me to talk about here, then you can DM me or the podcast on social media, then I will get into it. My social media handles are in the show notes of this episode. Reach out. I love interacting with you guys. I love hearing your thoughts on this podcast and even just your thoughts on the episodes. Give the podcast a 5-star rating on the platform that you're listening in on. And do not forget to catch the next episode of Crime KE podcast on Thursday next week. Same time, same place. But until then, stay safe and remember, it's crime with a K.